morning, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to Victory Over Trauma, a singles ministry presentation for everyone. We are absolutely delighted to host this event this morning. We are grateful and glad that you chose to join us this morning. We've got a great morning on tap. I'm Minister Celeste Kennedy. I am the director of the Singles Ministry and part of our lead team. And I just want to welcome you all. I'm going to open us up in prayer, and then we're going to get the morning started. All right, let's look to the Lord. Father God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this morning filled with brand new mercies, Lord God. We thank you for each person who has registered or logged on to Facebook Live to join the conversation this morning. God, we thank you for each guest speaker this morning, Dr. Candace Williams, Cassandra Logan, and Bruce Herring, God, and what they will pour into your people this morning. Now, God, we ask that you would have your way this morning or whenever people are watching this recording. God, that chains would be broken, that victory would come. People would learn how to heal, how to maneuver through trauma, God, and to be better, God, to seek what they need, to seek you first, God, and you would point us in the right direction, that we would be well in you and able to be well in life, God. We thank you for what you're going to do on today, and we're grateful, God, for technology affording us this opportunity to gather together in your name and to be great in you. Lord, we love you and we thank you for all you've prepared today. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. So again, for those who may have joined after I introduced myself, I am Minister Celeste Kennedy. We are delighted to have you here this morning. I am going to be passing the mic, if you will, to my team, my co-lead, one of my co-leads on the team, Tanisha Hampton. Tanisha.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tanisha. I am, like Celeste said, one of the leads on the Singles Ministry, and I will be your host during the Sweet Spot segment. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Brandy.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Tanisha, for that introduction. Again, my name is Brandy, and I will be acting as your MC for today. I have the pleasure of being able to introduce all of our amazing speakers and presenters today. But before I do that, I do want to let you know that we have a little secret up our sleeves. We will be doing a giveaway during our Sweet Spot later on during this event. So to be a winner, you have to stay on the whole time. Tanisha will be announcing the winners later, but just a little teaser. You definitely want to watch the whole event because we're going to be giving away 3 vouchers for cupcakes. I don't know about y'all, but I love me some cupcakes, and especially if they're made by Chef B.D. Herring, okay? I know that's my good bro, but those cupcakes are the bomb. So be sure to, if you're watching us on Facebook, or even if you're here live watching us with Zoom, you have a chance just by being in the room and winning, okay? So Tanisha will announce the winners later on, and then we'll give you all the information on how to pick them up and everything like that. So without further ado, I am going to give you all a short bio for Dr. Candace Williams, one of our favorite people. So just one second. Okay, so Dr. Williams is a licensed professional counselor at The Ohio State. I feel like I have to say the, that's how I'm a big sports fan. The Ohio State University's athletic department, sports psychology and wellness services, where she provides psychotherapy and wellness programs to student athletes, coaches, and athletic support staff. So I am going to pass it over to our first presenter, Dr. Candace Williams.
Thank you for that. And thank you all for having me. I am excited to be back again, this time talking about trauma. And so before I get started, I want to make sure that I let the audience and those of you watching on Facebook as well as in Zoom know that I am one of those people that I like to talk with you and not at you. And so that means that even though some of us are muted and then I can't see everybody who's on Facebook live, if something that I say resonates with you, if you have a question, please put it in the chat. If you have a comment, please put it in the chat. I know in Zoom you can have like reactions where you can put a thumbs up or anything like that. I'm a big proponent of not just verbal, but nonverbal communication as well. During this time, if I say anything that brings up any type of emotion or feelings for you, please make sure that you are kind to yourself and you listen to that. And you take the time that you need as it relates to if you need to pause the Zoom, if you need to walk away and come back. Of course, these things are being recorded for you all to access at a later time. And so I also want to make sure that people are focused on being present as well as listening to themselves and their bodies and their emotions. If anything that I say resonates with you, please be mindful of paying attention to that. Also, I am one of those people who likes to give you the content and the information, but I'm also here as well as to, advocate for the fact of healing, right? So there's information about trauma, which I'll go over. I'll talk about some of the byproducts or the reactions in terms of trauma and how that manifests emotionally and physically for us. But then I'm also challenging everyone as you're hearing this information, if it resonates with you or it causes you to be concerned about somebody who's in your life, to also encourage them, to seek the help that they need. This by no means is supposed to be a support group or me doing any type of therapy by any means, but more so providing the education and encouraging you to feel empowered to have victory over your trauma by taking that next step to get the help that you need. So we'll go ahead and get started. And if I talk too fast, please put in the chat, let me know, tell me I need to slow down. Like I said, I'm here to have a conversation with you and not at you. And so one of the things that I really enjoyed when Zion Woodbridge in Singles Ministry had come to me about this topic was that, it is a topic that is not often discussed amongst the African American community, and even in the church, right? We think of trauma and we think of it as something that is daunting, that is bad, that is, a negative, but there's also victory and healing and strength in that too, in terms of being able to acknowledge it and then also understanding how it works and how it manifests and then how you can overcome that. So I am excited for not only this event but the ones to come in terms of us being able to have those candid and informal conversations about topics such as mental health and trauma. And so we'll get into it. So trauma, when people think of that, they think of, something again that is negative, something that is potentially daunting or something that is traumatic in the sense of like there's a physical or emotional negative connotation to that in terms of distress or depression. And there are various different types of trauma, right? So right now we're all in a global pandemic as well as a racial pandemic. And for a number of us, that is traumatic, and there's different levels to that. So trauma can start in childhood. You can have trauma in terms of experiencing a traumatic event, whether it be a natural disaster, whether it be a crime that you've witnessed, whether it be something that has specifically happened to you at any particular stage and age of your life. It definitely manifests different in terms of the symptoms as well as your body's reaction to that in terms of, how you respond to that trauma. So there's 3 different specific traumas that I'll emphasize. One of those is acute trauma. Typically that is you experience a traumatic event and over the course between 3 days to maybe 3 months, you'll experience some symptoms as it relates to confusion, anxiety, depression, lack of sleep, because you have experienced that traumatic event, let's say within the last 72 hours. There's something called chronic trauma, which is an extended period of time, which often leads to PTSD symptoms, which is post-traumatic stress disorder, any type of flashbacks, again, anxiety, depression, just not feeling connected in the sense of like having any type of physical arousal. You have a blunt affect, meaning you're very indifferent to things. And those chronic traumas things that continue to happen again over time. That could be like domestic violence, being in a domestic violence or emotionally abusive relationship is an example of that. And then there's complex trauma. So there's trauma on top of trauma. So particularly right now, right? We're in a global pandemic. Just to give you kind of a surface level example of that, we're in a global pandemic. We had to adjust to those types of things for those of us who have been affected by that, whether you have gotten COVID or you have lost your job due to this particular pandemic. That would be traumatic for some people. And then add on top of that, the racial trauma that we have experienced, as Black, Indigenous people of color, in terms of the George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, piled on top of your own traumatic experiences with race, and discrimination or prejudice, on top of the fact that we have a history historically of having to deal with trauma in terms of just how we got to this country and all of the things that we as Black people have had to endure and deal with, added on top of the microaggressions and things in the workplace, right? So then you have that complex trauma on top of the fact that the things that we use to communicate with each other, whether that be social media, there are things that come up unexpectedly that we're curious to watch because of the fact that it's affecting our people. And then that is also traumatizing for us, which is also could be considered vicarious trauma, right? And that vicarious trauma is us being witness to those that we love and know going through that. And then we take that on as well. The most known type of trauma that I think that in this country that we have been, I won't necessarily say completely open to talking about, but a lot of people endure. So when they think of trauma, is childhood trauma, whether that be sexual abuse, sexual assault. And so those, in that particular instance of chronic trauma, can have some lasting effects. So you have people who are going through some things in life, whether they affect their productivity at work or they affect their relationships or friendships. And they're like, well, where's all this coming from? And then there's this trauma from childhood that they have not addressed that could potentially manifest in other aspects and parts of our lives. And so, again, those traumas could be anywhere from natural disasters, child abuse, domestic violence, human trafficking. It runs the gamut. And so it's not that one person's trauma is worse than the other. It's for you particularly, how you interpret that, how you perceive that, and how that actually has impacted you. And so I tell people, again, just being mindful of and being present about, like, what am I feeling? What am I going through, especially during this time, because of the fact that I think, and I'm speaking specifically about African-American people, is that we are strong and resilient, especially for Christians, right? We have been told that, in this life, you will have trials and tribulations. And so we take on a lot in terms of caring for ourselves and caring for those around us, and then also being supportive of each other. And so even though there is prayer, right? Even though we know that there is a God, there oftentimes we are human beings that we feel a lot, and we can get in that mode of suppressing those or minimizing those, of like, okay, I can overcome that, and yes, there is victory over trauma, but that big piece of getting that victory is that healing process. And so we can't negate or neglect that is a part of the healing process when it comes to trauma. It's one, acknowledging it, two, being brave enough and feeling empowered enough to go back to that place and then work through that when it comes to processing that. And so sometimes people are like, well, how do you deal with that? What is the first step when it comes to particularly working through trauma? And I think part of that is, again, acknowledging it. Outside of the acute trauma, the chronic trauma, and the complex trauma that I had just mentioned, there's such a thing as generational trauma, right? And I think sometimes too, when we are people, we don't know any better in the sense of how we do what we do because, historically within our family units, that's how things have been done, right? And so that generational trauma is that trauma that has been passed down from generation to generation. And the most simplest form of that that I can kind of speak to in terms of the history of what I've worked with in terms of trauma is, child sexual abuse trauma. We go from experiencing those things and harboring those and hiding those and feeling embarrassed or judged by sharing that. And then it trickles down to that next generation and so forth and so on. And so part of breaking that cycle, of course, is within our family units, is feeling safe enough and vulnerable enough to talking about that. But we first have to acknowledge it for ourselves. And so one of the things that I want to stress throughout this is, again, if you're feeling as though, oh, there's some stuff that's coming up for me, or maybe I can make a mental note about my own trauma, and that, I want to start that process of healing from that, is just to be patient and kind with yourself. Acknowledging it is the first step. But the other part of that is just being patient and kind with yourself or those that you know that may be going through some things. And the biggest example that I can have of that in terms of real time right now is, I don't know if some of you follow, I guess, pop culture or social media. Tamar Braxton had recently attempted to take her life. And in some of the blogs that they had mentioned, that she had emphasized that she had been sexually abused from the age of 6 to 16. And that was the biggest thing, it seems like, in addition to every other complex trauma and the stress of trying to work and be in the limelight, that has impacted her. And as you can see, a lot of the times when we think that, okay, I'm in a good space and I've gotten, a hold of this, depending on, again, those complex traumas or other things that are stressors, that can definitely bring those things back up. And it could lead to something such as, suicidality, which is where we don't want to get to, right? We want to be able to be more preventative than reactionary. But with trauma, depending on the different stages in your life and these other stressors in your life, even if you've gotten the help that you need, it could very well come back up. And you want to make sure, again, if you're present and you're in the moment and you're conscious and you're self-aware, that, okay, where is my safe haven that I need to go to? Similarly, in children, working with kids, I have, oftentimes shared with parents that, your child can go to therapy from age 5 to 6 or 7. And in that stage of their life, we can help them cope with that trauma. We can help them work through that and express feelings around it. But then when they get to puberty and they are, in their teenage phase, and as their brains develop, right, some of the things and how they were able to cope and handle that trauma at that age will also probably manifest and look different when it comes to particularly their behaviors, because they're entering into a different developmental stage of their life. And with that developmental stage, not just with children, but us as, adults, trauma also impacts our brain function. So, people look at the psychological aspect of it in the sense of the depression, the anxiety, the physical or somatic complaints that we have in terms of how our bodies internalize that trauma, but also it impacts our brain. So outside of having a concussion, right, or a traumatic brain injury or some type of injury to our head that we, oftentimes attribute to brain functioning, chronic trauma or complex trauma in terms of a child's development can also impact their brain functioning as well. And so one of the things that we are mindful of, as professionals, is that not only are we educating our parents on how to parent those children and those children on how to regulate themselves, but that there are lasting impacts and effects, not just psychologically, not just physiologically, but also cognitively when it comes to brain function and trauma. Transitioning into adulthood, again, as I mentioned before, that can manifest in how we internalize things in terms of our own self-concept for ourselves and our own self-esteem, and then how we connect with others in relationships, and how we view things from the lens of our own perspectives as it relates to that emotional trauma that is following us throughout our developmental stages in our lives. And so the thing is that I think it's important to be aware of what trauma is. It's important to be aware of how it impacts you individually. It's important to not self-diagnose also. I think that too, with the World Wide Web, we have WebMD, we can hashtag anything on Twitter and Instagram, right? And we have this community of people who've also experienced things similar to us. But I think it's also important that if you are experiencing any type of mental health or physical ailments as it relates to stress, as it relates to any type of trauma that has been triggered for you during this time, as it relates to COVID, as it relates to Black Lives Matter, I would encourage you to seek the help of your physician as well as, of a mental health provider, because that is so important at this particular time. Yes, it's important to check on your strong friends. Yes, it's important to have a community of people, but it's also important for you to seek out and vet those professionals, for one, that are culturally competent in what in terms of your culture, and as well as things that are going on around us in the world today, but also who can, help educate and help walk you through that process as well. Because like I said, we oftentimes get to a place, and as a professional and as a Black woman, as a single Black woman, I am guilty of that as well, of like, okay, I can keep pushing, or like, oh, this doesn't bother me. I have dealt with racism all my life. I can get past this, right? But then you see that video of George Floyd on the ground with the police officer's knee on his neck, and tears just come down your face, right? And it's important to acknowledge that, but it's also important to say, this is something that is impacting me, and for the best quality of life that I can offer myself, I need to get some help, or I need to get some healing. So I do want to stop right there. I feel like I'm talking really, really fast. I'm open to getting questions as we go as well, if there are any. But I also, just want to take this time to also make sure that as I'm providing the information, again, if anything resonates with you, if anything that you feel like you have a question, please put it in the chat. Also, I also want to make sure too that we emphasize that I think oftentimes when we think of trauma, we think of it as something that affects one particular group of people and not the other, not just children and not just women, but men have their own set of traumas that they go through as well, that I oftentimes think that we don't pay much attention to or emphasis on as well. I think right now, because of the climate of where we're at when it comes to Black Lives Matter, when it comes to, Black men being targeted and discriminated against Black people in general, but specifically the war on Black men as it relates to the hands of the police, that is an experience that Black men go through, but it's not the only one. Right? We have young Black men and even men of all different ages and stages of their lives who go through things that I think we don't oftentimes talk about, because there is this perception that men are these masculine, strong individuals, and then they don't have to worry about anything, or that they don't struggle. And it's something that is oftentimes, again, not talked about in various different ways, that they experience those and then how they deal with them as it relates to processing them, if at all, and then also healing from that. And so I just want to make sure too, for those of you who are watching or who have loved ones, when it comes to looking at trauma, it's being mindful of the fact that we all are dealing with it in our own different ways, but that to not assume that the person to the right or to the left of you, or who is in your contacts or who you follow on social media, is handling everything very well, right? Because, it's easy to put on a facade that things are fine for us, but I think oftentimes we neglect to check in not only with our strong friends but with our men as well. And there's that stigma within that population of weakness or embarrassment related to I've dealt with some type of trauma, right? I think one of the people who comes to my mind is Common, the rapper who talked about how he was in a relationship with, I think, Angela Ray, and they had broken up, and he talked about how he had to go to therapy and really work through some of that trauma that he had experienced in childhood that was also impacting his ability to connect and relate to women in terms of relationships. And so I think that too, feeling empowered, not only in a way of being able to heal from that, but being able to share that and talk about that in a lot of our different safe spaces, especially for our men, is important. And then as we segue into, of course, this is a singles ministry, but when it comes to relationships, trauma and any type of experiences that you've had that you consider to be significant as it relates to your own development and relationships and connecting with other people are very vital as it relates to just relationships in general. And so I know people oftentimes hear folks say, the better single person you are, the better your relationship will be when it comes to, connecting yourself with someone else. And, that is very much something that I encourage a lot of the people that I work with when they are single or they're in relationships, is also looking at the fact that you're coming from a different family unit. Both of you are two individual people who are coming from different family backgrounds. And then you also have any type of significant or traumatic experiences that you would deem, whether that be in relationships or separate from that you are bringing into that relationship. Right. And so oftentimes we might feel like, okay, I think I've gotten this under control. And then that person that we are connected to or dating does something that triggers something for us. And then we have to go back and we have to do a self-check and saying that, okay, well, what is this that is some type of transference or counter transference, meaning there's something that this person is doing or I'm doing, or something about this interaction seems very familiar from the past that I thought maybe I got through, that I need to also continue to work through. And so, think of it this way too. You often hear you attract what you reflect, or basically in terms of how healthy you are is your ability to recognize those red flags in someone else. And so what you don't want to do is say the only thing that I have in common with the person that I'm connected to, whether that be friendships, or any type of business partnerships or relationships, is the pain that we share, right? And you want that to be a place of, I want to have a healthy dynamic and a healthy relationship with people in my life. And I don't want to be the first thing that they're exposed to that I'm vulnerable with is my trauma, right? It's more so that I've healed from that and I'm letting them in and I'm sharing with them, this is how I have recognized that this impacts me when it comes to connecting with other people. So, I have to put that caveat in there that if you are someone who is, really focusing on working on yourself, nothing you are doing is about wasting time. Right. So oftentimes we want to be like, okay, I need to be in this relationship with this person, or God, where is that person? Or when is that person going to come? And I tell people the destination is not in X, it's in the journey. And so if you are taking that time and space, whether it be right now during COVID, whether it was pre-COVID, this racial pandemic that we're also in, it's making sure that, if you're recognizing that, or you want to take the next step to recognize that, is that, okay, how am I putting myself first? And what is it that I'm willing to, on my list of priorities of self-healing, of self-reflection and self-awareness, am I ready to take that next step in? Right? For some of us, we may be in relationships, we may be married, we may have friendships that we have been connected to and people that we love for a very long time. And, there is this concern or care about like, I've had this trauma that I've been dealing with for some time that I can't forget. Right. But I can heal from. And it's more so like when you find that there are different stressors in your life, there's nothing wrong with doing a self-check. Right? There's nothing wrong with saying, okay, how am I really doing? Right? We often ask people that, how are you doing and how are you feeling? And I think we do that as pleasantries because then we're like, oh, well, I'm fine. But it's like, no, really, how am I really feeling? And as a mental health professional, I can't just preach that and not practice it. Right. And so I have been able to create my own safe space with some other friends of mine to be able to just really check in and say, how are we really doing? You know, how am I feeling powerless in this moment, and how am I feeling empowered? You know, because that is a big piece of doing that work. I would be wrong if I said, oh, you can heal from your trauma and you don't need therapy. As a therapist, I'm one of those people that's a product that and I'm an instrument in the work that I do. But I also have a skill set in teaching people how to cope with that trauma, right? And so outside of there being self-help books, outside of there being prayer as a part of our day-to-day as Christians, and having our community of brothers and sisters in Christ to help uplift us, there's a piece of that trauma process in terms of healing from that puts you in a space that is very vulnerable, that causes you to really be honest with yourself and the things that you have dealt with. And sometimes you have to oftentimes relive that in terms of speaking it out loud. And I encourage people to do that in a safe space of professionals who can help guide you through that. Because that part of acknowledging it and healing from it is that we have to be open to doing both. You know, we have to be open to saying that this is something that is very much a part of our culture, whether we want to, because we don't need to take ownership of that, right? In the sense that we can acknowledge it, but the things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis are not by our own doing as it relates to the prejudice and injustices that we deal with every day. However, we are left to have to unpack those things and heal from them as it relates to racial trauma. But part of that is, you know, being able to acknowledge that this is something that I went through, as scary as it may have been, as hard as it may have been for me to relive that. I relive it in my head every day, or it manifests in a lot of different ways. The other part of that is sitting with someone and really trusting them to walk with you along that journey. And there are people who are professionals who specialize in working with trauma as it relates to whether it be a licensed clinical social worker, a licensed professional counselor like myself, a licensed psychologist, psychiatry. They more so prescribe medication, but they also can do talk therapy. There are support groups for individuals who have gone through trauma as well. There is such a thing as doing some breath work as well as some meditation, which I think is another part of today's segment that also is helping with coping with those intrusive thoughts, or being just present when it comes to dealing with trauma, in addition to, you know, prayer as well. And so, you know, I tell people whatever that method is for you in terms of coping, we want to make sure that it's healthy. If you find yourself trying to self-medicate to kind of deal with the trauma, then, you know, that's a road that we don't want you to go down. Right. And so some people revert to whether that be substance abuse or some type of impulsive reactions in terms of whether that be spending, whether that be joining themselves in relationships with people who may not be healthy. Right. Repeated patterns of things to try to fill certain voids as it relates to a result of that trauma versus actually, of course, you know, having victory over it, meaning walking through that, processing it, healing from it. And a part of that healing process, you know, when you're working with therapy, is accepting that and then also being at peace with it. And so I tell people it's not so much being stuck on the why, but more so how do we get to that place of healing? You know, when it comes to trauma as it relates to the most extreme aspects of it, whether that be any type of physical or sexual abuse, when it comes to children, there are resources for kids as it relates to that, and intervening early so that we can give them the tools so that they can, like I said, each developmental stage when they grow up, they're able to go back to those things that they've learned to help them through that process. But I noticed that there are some questions coming through. I've gotten one, Brandy, that was sent to me directly that asked about what's a good point of measure or stage in which are able to start having relationships, if that makes sense, coming from a traumatic experience. And I think I touched on this just briefly a little bit in terms of when it comes to a relationship, you have to be mindful of not only what benefit did this person have in my life, but also what do I have in theirs, right? And if, again, all of if they're not getting the best version of you, and you are not getting the best version of you, you want to gauge that as it relates to, are you ready to be connected to someone when it comes to at an emotional level, given the trauma that you have experienced and what type of trauma that is as well. And so I would say that on a personal basis, it is more so, do you feel like you are ready to be vulnerable with someone in terms of sharing with them the traumatic experience that you have experienced, and then for them to be able to say, well, how have you healed from that? Are there still some unresolved issues related to that trauma that is going to impact your ability to connect and be vulnerable, and trust that person with your feelings? Because not only are you working through that on your own, but also too, being able to say, is this person an emotionally safe person that I can trust them with that experience when I share that to them, and that they are going to be patient and kind with me, knowing that I have had something traumatic happen in my life that very well could present itself as stressful times in my life as well. And so I tell people, you want to make sure for you that you find your own happiness, that you find your own solace, that you find your own being at peace with that before you add another person into your life, because they may not be bringing their trauma, but how do they handle stress? What does anxiety look like for them? You don't want to connect yourself to someone out of anxiety or have an insecure attachment with a person when you are your most vulnerable, and they are not at the same pace with you. And so you hear people talk about being equally yoked, right? A Christian and a Christian being equally yoked, being on the same page. Same thing with emotional and mental health. We're all at different stages in our lives, but you want someone who is very much self-aware, right? 1 in 5 people have mental illness. 5 in 5 of us are going to experience challenges that are going to impact our mental health. And so as you are looking for someone who has these things that you check off your list, you also want to make sure, well, how is this person, where's their emotional IQ? How aware are they of themselves? Is this person someone that I can vibe with on an emotional level, to where if I reveal something about myself, that they are not going to hold that against me, that they are going to handle that with kid gloves, and it's not that you have to give them your whole life story, right? I tell people, even when it comes to your emotions, when it comes to your trauma, when it comes to relationships, you want to, ease into that. You have to be mindful too, not just with trauma, but anything related to any past relationships or patterns that you have. If you find yourself easily connecting to someone or revealing a lot of yourself that is very personal to you within like a couple of weeks, a couple of days with this person, you need to sit back and say, okay, well, what is it about this particular individual that makes me feel safe to share all of this information so soon? And then say, okay, I need to pace myself. Because you don't want it to, of course, give that information to someone and you trust them and they're like, okay, this is just week 1 and I know everything about this person. I think, there's something to be desired about revealing parts of yourself to also vet that person to see if they are capable of holding that and honoring that. And that's not just in relationships in terms of dating, but also friendships as well. And so I would say for that particular person who asked that question, I think it's personal, but also to, when you're ready in terms of also what you need in order to thrive when it comes to not just being romantically involved in someone in a emotional way, in the sense of separate from, anything that we do that we're not supposed to do when we're not married, but more so like, can I build a friendship with this person? And you don't want to put the burden on that person to be your caregiver emotionally or your therapist. And there's boundaries when it comes to dating as well, when it comes to that trauma. I particularly encourage both men and women, when you know that there is something that you are dealing with or that you are overcoming, or that's something that is not very much present in the forefront, but is something that you've experienced, that you share and set boundaries, with that person that you're dating. And not to get into any entanglements, but in terms of, I know Will and Jada are a hot topic, with their Red Table Talk, but one of my favorite Red Table Talks about the two of them was when Will Smith had shared that he had a conversation with Jada about the language and the words that she was using towards him. There was a particular instance where they were at an event and she was cussing at him and she said some derogatory things towards him. And he pulled her to the side and said, listen, I watched my father say derogatory and negative things towards my mother growing up. He said, I have seen my father physically abuse my mother. He said, I cannot be in a relationship where if that is going to be your tone of voice, if that is going to be the language that you use, I cannot handle that because of my previous experience growing up. And he said, I do not want to, have a repeat of that in my relationship. And he set a boundary with her. And he also has shared with her in that moment, this is the reason why. It's not that I want to be controlling over you. It's not because of this is what I says goes. It's more so that this is the history behind that. And that really affected me. And so he stated that he had set that boundary with her. And that was a part of their relationship, I think, progressively that they had to work on. But being able to set those boundaries and to say, I don't do well with, name calling. I don't do well with curse words. I don't do well with X, Y, and Z, and it's okay to set those in a healthy way, right? It's okay to assert what you need in order to thrive in that relationship. And if a person is going to be able to assist you in that, great. If they're not, then you have to make some decisions as, is this a person I need in my life or I want in my life to fill that void based off of the trauma that I have either unpacked or maybe there's some stuff that's coming up for me and I feel like I just want to have this person to be present. So the goal is, again, when I talk about the generational trauma too, is that you don't want to repeat whatever's been passed down to you in the sense of how you have watched people around you, go through life, right? You oftentimes hear parents say, I want my child's life to be better than what I had. Right. And part of that is acknowledging that piece of maybe I don't want a relationship like my parents had, whatever that particularly was for you. And if you want to change that dynamic, it's really unpacking, those things one item at a time. I tell people it's like having a suitcase, and we've all been there where we try to pack too much into the suitcase and we have had to lean on it, sit on it, and zip it up. And, it weighs a ton. We get to the airport and we have to pay extra money to put this on a plane. But it's like unpacking that suitcase one item at a time and realizing, is this something that I've been carrying for a while that I realized that I didn't even need, or that this one thing that I have been carrying has been holding me back. And you may not have that in your, the insight for that right now, but going through therapy allows you to connect those dots. And it's nothing that is particularly bad. I tell people with therapy, it helps you to get more insight about who you are. Right. And it helps you to get more insight about how you perceive and see things around you. In addition to, this growth journey of being more aware, and not only for yourself, but then that way, if you are connected to someone and you are on your journey and path to growth and healing, and you're connected to someone, whether that be a friend or somebody that you're dating, and it's like, wait a minute, there's some red flags here and I can't turn those white. Or I may have to have the sense of discernment to say, I need to part ways with this person because as I'm on my, journey of healing, this person is not where I'm at emotionally. And although they have all these great, wonderful things to check off on their box, we really aren't going to get anywhere if I am trying to heal myself and then I'm also catering to and caring for another person emotionally. It's not that you have to separate or break up with that person in the sense, it's just acknowledging that and being aware of that when it comes to that trauma. And so, if I could leave you with, one big piece of like a light bulb or like a mic drop, it's more so, again, nothing that you are doing is about wasting time. And that resonates with me in the sense that therapy and healing through this process of trauma is not one that is going to happen in 90 days. It's not one that's going to happen in 60 days. It's not one that's going to happen in 6 months. It's a continuous process. Just like we have to be mindful of the things that we put into our bodies, right, to maintain our health, to maintain our quality of life. Some of the things that we oftentimes utilize and do for our own comfortability every day, your mental health is just as important. And working through and managing that depression, that anxiety. Those are things that take conscious effort to do because of the fact that we can't predict the future. At any moment, things could come up for us that could not be related to the trauma, but trigger that because of the fact that it increases our stress. So be mindful that anything that we're dealing with right now as it relates to COVID, as it relates to any particular things you're dealing with in your personal life, as it relates to the racial trauma and the stress that we're dealing with too, that impacts the cortisol in your brain, and that increases, in terms of your ability to manage your mood, and then your immune system is compromised as well. And then it also can throw off a lot of different things when it comes to your body. So you may be mentally thinking I have things under control, but your body is saying, listen, there is something wrong here, especially during this time where we are required to wear masks and wash our hands and things like that. So please be mindful that as you're on this journey to healing, or even starting the process of that, or you may started and you're like, I'm stuck, or I tried therapy and it didn't work, or I tried reaching out to people and they don't understand, is knowing that this is a process that is a fluid process that takes time, that is not something that happens overnight. If anything, when you get ready to talk about that trauma, if you're in therapy or if you're in these safe spaces to be able to share that, you are going to physically feel something and be a little moody and irritable as well, because you're unpacking those things that you probably suppressed for a while. And all of that is part of the process. But the good piece about that is having a support system and people that you trust, people who can be honest and direct with you, and that you trust to help you when you feel helpless, outside of that safe space of therapy. I think having that support is important. Being able to have people who you can just call and say, hey, can you uplift me right now? Can you pray with me right now? Whatever those practices are for you. We all can use those at any given moment in time, given the times that we're in right now. But I also think that as much as I stress, there are mental health professionals who are here to help, that we as a community have to start having more of these conversations so that we can break that stigma, so that we can acknowledge that outside of the racial trauma that we experience on a day-to-day basis, that there's some healing that needs to take place in our own households, that our own friendships, that it can't just be a topic of taboo anymore. That there is trauma that we are all experiencing, whether that be from stuff that we have had to deal with as children that we didn't ask for, and other things that we've also had to endure, along this journey of growth chronologically, physically, and emotionally. Also, too, if we have caused any type of traumatic experiences for other people, whether that be us wondering if what we said or what we did or how we responded affects somebody else. I think the big piece of that is acknowledging it. The big piece of that is owning it. That you can't heal what you don't reveal, right? And so if we assume that there is nothing wrong, and we don't acknowledge that, and we keep seeing these patterns of how we're going through life, and we're wondering, why am I so stuck? Why am I feeling this way? It is, maybe I need to sit with myself and really be honest about, here's some things that are really hurting me. Maybe I don't need to reveal that to too many people too soon, but I just need to sit with the fact that, and acknowledging that, and again, I'm talking in general terms. Trauma can get to a point to where it definitely can manifest to some serious consequences for those who are in that deep, dark space. And if you find yourself in there, there is help for you. There are crisis lines. There are therapists who are available to be able to speak with you, because of the fact that there is this part of it where it impacts your daily life. And again, that chronic trauma can very well manifest in a lot of different ways, to where you have to be diligent and intentional about, your mental health. And so if you find yourself in that space, I want to encourage you to please reach out to someone, a crisis line, someone that is close to you, and we can definitely get you the help that you need in terms of that first step of dealing with that trauma.
Thank you so much, Dr. Williams. We have a ton of questions, probably more than what we have time for. But thank you, everybody, for participating and listening and joining in and being present in this moment. We're going to get to as many questions as we can while we have Dr. Williams. So let's go ahead and get started. Our first question is microaggression in the workplace. Any navigation strategies?
When it comes to that, again, the first thing is acknowledging that exists for you, right? And also to how it is impacting you and in what ways it is impacting you. I think a big piece of that is, how you navigate it in the workplace in terms of coping with it every day. And then the other part of that is, how do you find your voice and feel empowered to bring awareness to it so that it doesn't happen again. But then there's that other aspect of it is like, okay, I can speak up about this and I can share that with the powers that be, but it's not going to stop. Right. And so I think for some of us, it's like, this is happening to me. How do I deal with this? But then also, how do I find my voice to be okay and feel comfortable that at the end of the day, I did share what was going on, even if there isn't any resolve, and that I can continue to feel empowered every day to say, when this happens, I'm speaking up. I think the big piece of that too is, again, surrounding yourself with a supportive group of people in your life that you can share that these things are happening, so that you don't feel like, am I the crazy person? I know what I just experienced really did happen. It's always important to have that other person that you can bounce that off of, and you can say, okay, am I tripping? Because this is something that I just experienced, and I know for myself that this is what just happened, and being able to share that with someone. The other part of that too is being mindful of, when you feel that, and you feel those microaggressions, what is it that you need in that moment? And if that is, again, a pep talk from a sister or brother or whatever it is, you get that. But then the other part of it is, in this moment, do I feel powerless? Do I feel like I need to say something? Okay, then let's look at how you can feel empowered to do that. Because oftentimes what happens is we feel like we have to take those things because we live in a world where there's a majority and we are the minority. And so I think also too, looking at what are those steps that you can take to vocalize what is happening to you, whether that be HR, whether that be a supervisor, whether that be putting things in writing, whether that be typing that out to get that out, and then saying, okay, the next step is, do I really want to hit send, and being okay and being at peace with that. But there's a part of you that has to feel like you have found that voice. And if you feel like you can't, then, it's more so, what are the consequences for you emotionally, physiologically, of having to keep going through, this experience. I am a proponent, anybody who's separate from me, being Dr. Candace Williams, as a friend of friends who deal with things at work every day. I find myself repeatedly saying to them, I want to empower you to use your voice to say what you need in that moment. And how do you need me to show up for you every day to make sure that you know that you have that voice to be able to say, these are things that are happening in the workplace that make me feel uncomfortable, right? That are impacting my mental health. Separate from that, I find that when I'm talking to friends, whether they be male or female, and they share with me that they're going through microaggressions at work, that I get emotionally revved up, because I can't do anything about their circumstance. And I, for myself, have had to acknowledge, okay, you feel stressed about this, you feel upset that these things are happening in the world, but how can you show up for this person every day to remind them that they are what they are, separate from what they're experiencing. So I think part of that is, affirming yourself, but also to finding a strategic way to navigate your workplace, to where you can also feel empowered to speak up about what is happening, and not really focusing on this won't change anything, but more so I feel empowered to speak up, and that I don't feel like I have the weight of that stress, and that the people on the opposite end or receiving end know that at any time I feel some type of way, I'm going to share that and I'm going to say that. And there's a way that you can. There's an article that I wrote that I'll share with you all on more so how you advocate in spaces for medical, in terms of with the doctors, and it's similar to handling microaggressions at work. So I can forward that to you for some feedback too.
Thank you so much. Our next question: how do you balance childhood PTSD and dating life without letting PTSD interfere with a positive dating experience?
Mm-hmm. One, my number one thing would be, have you processed or gone to therapy to work through that? Because thing is, depending on the magnitude, and I don't know all the details of that childhood trauma, whether that be sexual abuse, physical abuse, in terms of balancing that, I think you have to get to a place of, again, acknowledging that this is going to show up in your relationship. And part of that being that when you get to a space of dating that person, that you are vulnerable enough to share not everything with them, but that there's something that you have gone through. The big piece of that in terms of balancing it is, whenever something happens or manifests in your relationship, being open to communicating. I think sometimes you hear people say communication is key. I think there's a difference between communicating information and then also the quality of that communication. You don't necessarily have to tell everybody, again, your whole life story, depending on where you are in your relationship with that person. But balancing that is you acknowledging that, okay, this is a trigger for me. Or when I am emotionally either charged on something that is happening or distant related to something that is going on in our relationship, that I take a step back and say, okay, what is this really about? Right? And so that I don't project that PTSD and that experience onto this person that I'm dating. You oftentimes hear people say or use the term self-sabotage. You don't want to self-sabotage a situation or overthink things as it relates to what you've been through. So I'm not necessarily sure in terms of how your PTSD has manifested in your adult life, but I oftentimes tell people, when you find yourself triggered for certain things, or you're stressed related to things that aren't even connected to your relationship, be mindful of the fact that you want to check in with yourself, because then you don't want to be emotionally charged up, and then there are certain things that happen, and then all of a sudden you have given a reaction to something so small in your relationship that the person is like, well, really, what is the real issue, right? So balancing that is always acknowledging that, okay, there's something that I'm bringing into this. These are my triggers related to my PTSD from my childhood. These are things that make me feel uncomfortable or unsettled. I have to communicate and acknowledge that for myself, and then share with the person that I'm dating. Like, you know what? It's not you or anything that you particularly did, right? And part of that piece of relationships is you're going to be educating that person on things that you, and vice versa. I tell people, folks cannot read your mind. Just because you think that people know a general concept of what things are doesn't necessarily mean they know how to support you in that situation, because of the fact that, they may have never had to do that before. So I think the big piece of balancing that is also acknowledging your triggers, knowing what your coping skills are, and then also paying attention to how that PTSD is manifesting in your relationship, and a big piece of preventing those things versus trying to repair a rupture that happens because of the PTSD from childhood is acknowledging it, communicating it, and finding a way to, be vulnerable in that instance. With that person, and letting them know that you're coming in with something, but you're working through and healing from that at the same time.
Thank you. We have a time for a couple of more. So we have a question on emotional trauma, experience from a divorce. Past hurts show up today, preventing them from moving forward in a relationship. So, for example, trust. Can you kind of touch on that?
So, again, shameless plug in terms of like self-acknowledgement, self-awareness. Therapy is a big piece of, being able to unpack those things. But if you find yourself going through a traumatic event from a previous relationship of a divorce, and then it impacting the new relationship or potential relationship that you're getting into as it relates to that trust factor, you have to be mindful that the person that you're dating now, the person that you're with now, is not the person that you were with previously. Unless you find yourself and you look through your patterns of like, okay, I tend to date a certain type of person. Then that is us looking at, okay, what is the common denominator of those things, which would be you as that person. But in terms of building that trust, you don't want to go into a relationship where that person is already operating out of a deficit of trying to earn your trust, in the sense of they're paying for the trauma that the person, who you were with, has caused you, right? I don't believe in trusting people right away, in the sense of that there is a process to this. Like that person has to earn your trust. A part of building that trust is also being vulnerable and saying, these are some things that I have gone through, asserting yourself and setting those boundaries with that person of like, these are some things that I went through in my previous relationship that were really difficult for me, that I'm still trying to work through, and acknowledging that I don't deal well with miscommunication or lack of communication. That is a red flag for me. So, there is no harm in verbalizing those things as it relates to, hey, this is my roadmap or my rubric for trust, given that I've come out of a relationship that either took me out emotionally, that I'm trying to rebuild. And I do not want to add, another complex trauma on top of what I've been through in this new relationship. And part of that too is having to trust the process. If you are taking the time that you need to be able to develop the trust with this person, right? And then they have mistrust, or they do something that you are concerned about, then you haven't put yourself in a space to where you have completely connected with them too soon to be able to say, I can't detach myself from that person, right? But a big piece of that is also trusting yourself. When you come out of one relationship and, you're grieving the loss of that, as well as healing from the emotional trauma there, you have to be mindful of like, okay, how do I feel empowered? How do I show up for myself in this relationship? How am I feeling at peace with the things that I'm doing and the decisions that I've made? Because if you're going into a new relationship with someone, it's like, okay, before we even get down that road of trust, what about this person am I initially drawn to that fulfills this void or this thing that I needed, or I thought that I needed that I couldn't get for myself? So I think too is I'm always, again, a person that says, even though we feel like we have to rush into things, or we feel like we don't have enough time, is really taking your time and really saying to yourself, when I'm getting into this relationship from a previous one, am I emotionally ready? What is the benefit of this relationship as it means to adding to my emotional wellness? And then two, if there is a rupture in trust, how am I going to handle that emotionally as well? And so I think, again, it's all about self-reflection. It's all about, you being honest with yourself so that you don't put yourself in a situation where this person does something and you can't trust them, and it sends you back into this emotional tailspin from the previous relationship.
Okay, let's try to get to two more. Thank you, everybody, for submitting questions. So we have one talking about addressing trauma from being frightened as a child, maybe like fear of the dark and afraid of living alone as an adult.
Well, there are certain traumas that could lead into different phobias as well. So if you find that there's a traumatic experience that you have dealt with as a child that continues to resonate with you or follow you into adulthood, I would definitely, of course, again, shameless plug, say go and see a professional, in the sense that I don't know all of the details as it relates to that particular question in terms of the context, but there is something called exposure therapy too, that therapists are also well versed in terms of if there was a traumatic event that you experienced that is also impacting you to function on a day-to-day basis in what people would assume are normal settings, is doing some type of exposure therapy to that potential threat that you have deemed traumatizing for you, to get you to be open and more comfortable with experiencing it in a healthy environment, to the point to where it doesn't psychologically damage you, right? Like, in the sense of a concrete example could be someone who gets into a car wreck and when they were younger and it was traumatic for them, and then they've never driven in a car since. And part of that exposure therapy would be having them sit in the back seat in a car, having them sit in the passenger seat, then eventually getting them to the driver's side, having them drive down the street to the stop sign, those types of things. So with that particular trauma of darkness, it could even be symbolic to some other things that maybe you've blocked out as a child, that you've experienced too. So there could be some symbolism there, but there are therapists who specialize in that exposure therapy to help you get through that particular trauma.
Thank you. We have 5 minutes left, so I'm going to give you
Okay,
one last question. And thank you again so much, Dr. Williams, for your presentation, as well as deep diving into these questions from our audience. So last one, at what time do you become vulnerable in a relationship about your experiences? I don't think anyone embarking on a relationship is ready for you to download them up front without issue.
Mm-hmm. So that it all becomes, again, you're going to hear me say, for you as the person, what benefit does this relationship have for you, right? There's always a benefit behind the behavior in terms of how we do things and how we behave and how we think, and all of that stuff is intertwined. But when you're getting into a relationship with someone, it's out of need, out of want. Yes, we want to be connected with someone, we want to be married, we want to be loved. But a part of that is you having that self-reflection of like, okay, do I really want this to be something for the future? And then there are stages to that process of dating that person. No different than if you were starting a job, right? You would have to wait 90 days before you got your benefits, right? There's this period of time where you want to be able to know and understand, like, and observe this person. And then in terms of wanting to be vulnerable with them about what you have been through, you have to be comfortable to be able to do that. If you're trusting someone with a little bit of information, how are they taking that, right? It's not necessarily, hey, I was sexually abused as a child, but there are certain things that you're trusting them with, and they're handling that with care, to the point to where, you feel comfortable for yourself, where there is maybe a little bit of anxiety of telling them because you don't know how they're going to respond. But for you saying, okay, I'm at peace with this, and I'm going to share this with this person. And depending on their response, whether it be good or bad, and if they say, you know what, I can't deal with this, and they want to walk away from that I'm still going to be okay. Because there is a space where when you're vulnerable to people, people may not be able or equipped to deal with that because of their own stuff that they have, or because they're not ready for that. And that's a clear indication that that's not the person for you in that moment. So you don't want to make yourself, you don't want to stay with someone who isn't willing or ready to receive all that you come with. But in terms of being able to really share that, I would say you do that in chunks. You don't just download somebody with something in that instance, but that vulnerability has to also come with trust, and then also come with you being able to feel comfortable being able to share things with someone and seeing how they respond to the smallest of things before you download them with, this is what I'm dealing with. And then they're like, okay, I can handle that, and so I think too, it is taking your time and pacing yourself. And if you don't feel vulnerable enough, you're not ready for that. If you have to ask yourself that question of like, am I ready to tell this person this? Then you need to really check for yourself and say, am I okay? And have I made peace with it? Before I share that with anybody.
Thank you so much, Dr. Williams. On behalf of the Singles Lead team, you know we love you. Our audience loves you. We want to keep inviting you back. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for submitting your questions. We are going to be moving into the second half of our event today. And I have the pleasure of introducing our next presenter, Cassandra Cass-Logan. She is going to be doing a demonstration for us on breathing and relaxation. You should have gotten an email if you registered to have a chair with no arms, a firm chair. So it's about that time to bring it out. She discovered yoga in 2012 after a hip injury, and she recommends it as a part of her rehabilitation. And then she got hooked. So she's gonna spend the next 20 minutes with us doing breathing techniques and relaxation techniques, all from the comfort of your own home with a nice chair. I know we just got to lift all this stuff off, so I'm excited. So I'm going to pass it over to her next, and then as your MC, I'll be back on for our next segment. So take it over, Cass.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Okay, good. Hi, everybody. My name is Cass Logan, and I'm a certified registered yoga instructor. And so today we're going to do some breathing and some stretching, some relaxation techniques for you that you can do anywhere. You can do at home. If you're back in the office, you can do at work. Some of you can even do in the car while you're just waiting for the red light to pass. So, like we said, it's good to have a firm chair with the back, preferably. You want to sit up. So you don't want to sit all the way back on the chair. You want to sit up. So like maybe you're halfway forward on the chair. You want both of your feet firmly planted. You're about hip distance apart. You know, ladies, our hips range in size. So about 2 fists between your knees is an approximation of hip distance. You just want to gently rest your hands over your knees. And so when we're stressed, when we're angry, when we're uptight, we tend to clench a lot of things. So you want to just take an assessment of your body. If you're holding on to anything, just want you to let it go. You want you to relax your eyes, relax your jaws, draw your shoulders down away from your ears. Just allow yourself to kind of sink into the chair. And we're going to start with some breathing techniques. It's called a 3-part breath. It helps guide you through a deeper breath and not the shallow breathing that we're doing. And we're going to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose throughout this practice. When you breathe in and out of your mouth, it's almost like a pant. It's almost telling your body that something's wrong, something you need to escape from. So if you're trying to wind down, calm down, relax, release anger, you always want to breathe in and out from your nose. And if you are comfortable, you can gently close your eyes or just cast your gaze down. Closing your eyes is not comfortable for you. And just breathe normally for a couple breaths. And then on the next inhalation, take a deep inhale through your belly. Feel the belly expand like a balloon. And as you exhale, draw the belly button back towards the spine. On the next inhale, deep breath in through the belly. And then take that breath up to the lungs. Feel your ribs open up and your lungs expand, as well as the sides of your body open up. Then exhale from the lungs to the belly. And then inhale belly, lung, and take that breath all the way up to the chest, maybe holding it here for a couple seconds. And then exhale from the chest, the lungs, and the belly. And can you continue doing that 3-part breath just for a couple rounds, inhaling the belly, lungs, chest, exhale, chest, lungs, and belly. And one more time, inhale, belly, lungs, and chest. Exhale, chest, lungs, and belly. And then allow your breathing to normalize and flutter your eyes open or up, however you have them. Let's just do some shoulder stretches. So let's inhale, reach the shoulders up towards your ears. Exhale, roll those shoulders down and back. And let's reverse that. Inhale the shoulders back and up towards your ears. Exhale, roll them forward and down. Inhale, shoulders up. Exhale, shoulders back. And reversing that. Inhale, shoulders up. Exhale, shoulders forward and down. Then just kind of wiggle around. Release the shoulders. So you're going to place your right hand down along your side and press the palm like you're pressing the palm towards the floor. You're going to reach the left arm up. And you're going to hold onto your right ear with your left arm, your left hand, I'm sorry. And just gently fold over towards, folding your ear towards the left shoulder. So do this gently because you don't want to strain your neck too much. Just a little gentle stretch here. And then release. And we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. Left palm plates down. Reach your right arm up. Hold on to the left ear as you draw the right ear towards the right shoulder. Breathing always. And then release. So, we hold tension in our neck. We hold tension in our shoulders. We also hold tension in our back. So we're going to do a few rounds of cow and cat pose, seated. So again, bring your hands gently placed on your knees. And on the inhale, you're going to draw your chest through your arms. Maybe allow your head to fall back. On the exhale, you're going to round the back. Bring the chin towards your chest. Inhale, arch in the back, bringing the head back for cow pose. Exhale, round the back, tuck the chin to the chest for cat pose. And just do a few more of these at your own pace, really stretching and extending where it feels good to you. This is a good gentle stretch. We need to do this on our hands and knees, but it can be done in the chair. Same benefits. And there's one more round of that. And then come back to sitting upright. Okay, so we're going to do some twists. So you're going to reach your right arm up and place it gently on the outside of your left knee. Reach the left arm up and turn the palm to the side, and you're going to twist, keeping that arm extended up. And then keep the arm up. We're going to come back facing front, and you're going to cross the left arm over the right. And then you're going to keep that cross as you lift both arms up. And then you're going to lift your forearms up. And see if you can turn your palms towards each other. If not, you're just going to give yourself a nice hug right here. But if you can turn your palms towards each other, you're going to reach your elbows forward and up as you draw your shoulders down. These are eagle arms. Just feel a nice stretch in the tops of your shoulders. A couple breaths here. And then slowly release. You're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. You're going to take your left hand, bring it gently on the outside of the right knee. Reach that right arm up, turning to the right for a nice twist here. Breathing. And then turning back towards the front. Going to cross that right arm over the left, lifting both arms up. And then lifting your forearms up, turning your palms in, or giving yourself a hug, same thing. Elbows forward and up, shoulders down. And breathe here. And release, and just shake it out. So another place where we tend to hold on to tension and stress is our hips. That's because when your body doesn't know the difference from when you're afraid, when you're angry, anything that gets you kind of hyped, it prepares you for your fight or flight response. So one thing that happens is your hip flexors kind of contract, and it prepares you to either run or to hide. And so, doing that a lot can cause those hip flexors to become really tight due to stress. So if you can open your feet out, opening your knees as wide as you can. My hips are very tight. I have arthritis, so they don't turn out too far. This is a nice gentle stretch. Take your hands. See if you can press open. You want your toes turned out a little bit towards the side. Just use your hands to gently stretch your knees out. And try to keep your knees where they are. We're going to bring our hands to the side. We're going to do a side bend. It's going to reach the left arm up. Reach the right fingertips towards the floor. As you fold over, stretching the left side of your body, but try to keep your sitting evenly on the chair. Maybe turn your head, look up under that top arm. Breathing here. And then coming back up, bring the right arm up to join the left. We'll do the same thing on the opposite side, folding over towards the left, stretching the right side of the body. Maybe turning your head, looking up. And then reaching up, both arms up, inhale. Extend your fingertips towards the ceiling like you're spreading out the bones of your spine. And then the exhale is going to fold forward. See if you can bring your fingertips and your palms down to the mat. Continuing to breathe. And then slowly roll up. Inhale your shoulders up towards your ears. Exhale, roll them down and back. You're going to bring your feet back in, hip distance. So one of the things we often do in yoga are called sun salutations, like you're saying hello to the sun or whatever, but it's just a series of folds, and it helps get your body moving and wakes you up. I really like, you can do these, of course you can do these standing, but you can do them in the chair as well. So bringing your arms down along the side, maybe have your your palms facing forward, shoulders down. On the inhale, we're going to sweep our arms up. And on the exhale, we're going to fold forward. Bringing your fingertips or palms down to the mat. Let your head fall down, chin to chest. On the next inhale, bring your hands to your shins, flatten your back, look forward. Exhale, let's fold again. On the inhale, we're going to reverse that swan dive, reaching your arms out to the sides and up. Bring your palms together. On the exhale, bring your hands down to prayer position. Let's do that again. Inhale, let's sweep our arms up. Exhale, let's fold forward. Inhale, bring your hands to your shins or maybe to your knees. Flatten your back, look forward. Exhale, slide your hands down, forward. Inhale, sweep up. Exhale, hands to heart center. We're going to do that 2 more times. Inhale, sweep up. Exhale, swan dive, fold. Inhale, hands to shins, flatten the back of the floor for a halfway lift, shoulders down. Exhale, fold. Inhale, sweep up. Exhale, hands to heart. One more time. Inhale, sweep up. Exhale, swan dive, fold. Inhale, come into a halfway lift. Exhale, fold. Inhale, sweep up. Exhale, hands to heart. And release. So let's extend our legs out in front of us. Heels down onto the mat, toes pointing up. So this is where sturdiness helps. Let me slide back just a little bit. Legs as straight as you can get them. They might be a little micro bend in your knees, which is perfectly fine. I'm going to inhale, sweep your arms forward and up. And exhale, just going to fold over, reaching for your toes if you can reach them, or your shins, or wherever your hands go. And bring your chin to your chest, dropping your head down towards your knees. Breathe here. And then slowly rolling up, bringing your feet back to the mat. So we're going to do another hip stretch. This might be intense for you depending on how tight your hips are. I'm actually going to start on my bad side. So you can, well, I don't want to call it my challenged side. So you can see what that looks like. I always start on my good side, but I'm going to start on my challenged side today. So I'm just going to lift my knee up, and we're going to cross, if you can, your right ankle over your left knee. Now, so you see my knee is up really high. This is my really tight side. So if you're able to do this, just hold on to your foot with your left hand and take your right hand and just kind of gently press down on the right thigh. So press that knee down to open up the hip some more. If that's too much for you, you can just kind of bring your foot, just cross it over, cross the right foot over the left, and you should still be able to feel this right here in your hip. So wherever you are, we're going to take a few breaths here. Remember, inhaling through the nose, exhaling through the nose, and your knee, wherever your knee is, just let the knee go. Don't try to hold on to it and hold it up. Just let it go and let your hip open up. Allow gravity to pull your knee down. A couple more breaths here. This is a figure 4. We usually do this on your back. So you can also do this on your back. So just imagine sitting on your floor, on your mat, and just rolling back with the same position. And then release that foot to the floor. Maybe shake it out a little bit. And we'll do the same thing on the other side, lifting the left knee up, crossing left ankle over right knee. So this side is much easier for me. I can sit like this forever. And just gently pressing down on that thigh to open up that hip, holding on to the foot with your opposite hand and breathing here. And release. And we're just going to draw your knee up towards your chest. See if you can hold on to your knee with both hands in front of your shin. Drawing that knee up, flexing the right foot. I'm sorry, I should have said the right first. Doesn't matter, we'll do the other side. Couple more breaths here. And then slowly release. Let's draw the opposite knee up towards your chest. And release. So let's reach your hands behind it. I'm going to turn to the side just so you can see. Reach your hands behind your back, interlace your fingers, draw your knuckles down towards the floor, towards your chair, opening up your chest, maybe allowing your head to fall back. I put lotion on my hands, so my hands are slippery now. And then bring your chin to your chest and see if you can fold. Lifting your arms up, my arms up, go very high, that really tight shoulders. Lifting your arms up behind you, keeping your fingers interlaced. And release, coming back up. So I'm actually going to turn my chair this way. You don't have to, I just want you to be able to see. You can just turn on your chair so you're sitting towards the side of the chair. We're just going to do a deeper twist here. So I have the chair on my right side, the back of the chair towards my right side. So I'm just going to turn, twist, hold on to the back of the chair. See if I can get a nice deep twist here. Breathe in here. And then release. I'm just going to come to the opposite side so I can do the twist in the other direction. And however you have your chair situated, from the twist in the opposite direction, using the back of the chair as leverage to help you twist a little bit deeper. And release. And I'm going to stay here so you can see what I'm going to do next. So you're going to reach your right arm up and pat yourself on the back. Lift your left hand up. Kind of coax that right hand down your back. Maybe hold on to your shirt. And then swing the left arm around and hold on to your shirt on this side. Now, if you're able, walk your hands towards each other and hook your fingers together. Otherwise, you can just hold on just like this. Reaching the right elbow up towards the ceiling, left elbow down. This is a nice upper back shoulder stretch called, what are these? Cow facing arms. And then release, and we'll do the same thing on the other side. Left arm up, pat yourself on the back. Use your right hand to coax that hand down, hold on to your shirt. And then reach the opposite hand around, holding on to the shirt here. Right elbow down, left elbow up. And then release. So we're going to do our final stretch, which is a downward facing dog pose, and we can use our chair. So you want to come and stand in front of your chair. Hold on to the back of your chair with both hands. Walk your feet back some so your head starts to fall between your arms. Reaching your hips back towards, or your seat back towards wherever wall is behind you. Feeling that stretch throughout your upper body along, as well as the back of your legs. Breathe in here for a few more breaths. If it's too comfortable to have your arms up high, you can just bring your arms down, hands down low, and do it this way. But if you want to bring more of the stretch into your upper body, arms on the top of the back of the chair. And then release. We're going to come back to our seat. Inhale, sweep your arms up. Bring your palms together. Exhale, hands to heart. Do that a couple more times. Inhale, sweep up. Exhale, hands to heart. And one more time. Inhale, sweep up. Exhale, hands to heart. And thank you. I hope this was beneficial to your body. I hope you feel relaxed, and I hope you opened up some things that may have been a little tight and tense. And remember, you can do this at any time throughout the day, whenever you want, every day. This is a nice, gentle flow. So thank you all for having me. This was great.
Thank you so much, Cass. We really appreciated that demonstration. I think we all feel much more relaxed and loose. So we are coming to our last segment, and I have the pleasure again of introducing not only a friend, but somebody who has become family to me, the chef, Bruce D. Herring, originally from the South, now lives up here in the DMV, educator by trade, foodie by passion. We are going to move into our segment with him. He's going to do some cooking demonstrations as well as provide our sweet spot. So before we move over to Bruce, I just want to let you guys know that please do not forget about our voucher giveaway. We are giving away 3 cupcake vouchers, 3 cupcakes each per voucher, and we will be announcing those 3 random winners at the end of Bruce's segment. So to be eligible to win, you have to be currently logged on into Zoom or currently logged in on our Facebook feed at Zion Woodbridge at the time of announcement, and then we'll get your contact information before everybody logs off to give you the date for the pickup. So without further ado, I am going to pass it over to my other co-host, Tanisha, who is live in person, mask in hand, to take over for the rest of the time. It was a pleasure. And again, thank you so much to our first 2 presenters, Dr. Candace Williams and Cass. We really appreciate you. All right, T, take it away.
Hey, everyone. It's Tanisha. I feel so good after that segment with Cass, but I'm here live with the chef, BD the chef, and we are going to go right into it. Hold on. There we go.
There we go. Hey, everybody. Bruce here, and today we're going to be doing 2 different dishes. The first one is going to be salmon with asparagus. Really simple, really easy, but we're going to make sure it tastes good and most importantly, looks good as well. And the second thing, I'm not going to actually cook this in the moment, but I'm going to give you guys some tips and pointers on how to make strawberry lemonade cupcakes. These are 100% homemade. Everything that I did from the batter to the frosting, even to the garnishes and how it all looks. So we'll go ahead and get started. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to look, we have our piece of salmon here. This is a smaller piece, but this is actually a really good piece to work with. It's not too big, not too thick. It should cook pretty well, pretty quickly as well. Then we have a lot of different seasonings. So right here we have butter, some Old Bay. Everybody has some of that in their cabinet. We have pepper, we have salt, we have white cooking wine, and we have tequila over here. And I'm going to show you what we're doing with the tequila later. Trust me, it's only for cooking purposes and not drinking purposes. And here we just have some, excuse me, fresh asparagus. We have lemon. These aren't just for decoration. We're actually going to be using these, okay? So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and get started with cooking our salmon. We're going to come on over here. So with our salmon, we're actually going to use a cast iron skillet, and we're going to turn it on high. Now, the reason why I'm doing this, especially with my salmon, I know some people are like, well, you shouldn't be cooking your stuff on high. When you want to blacken something, you want to sear it, you want to make sure that the pan gets as hot as possible. That way, as soon as the salmon hits the pan, it sears that skin, it secures that flavor, and it also doesn't stick. So what I did before, I already greased it, and right now I can already feel the heat coming up. So it's nice and greased. That ensures that we don't actually burn it and leave anything on the pan. But what we're going to do now, before we get started, we're actually going to take a little bit of butter and we're going to drop it in on top of the grease pan. Now, people are like, so why do you do this? One of the reasons why I like to do this is just because butter has a better flavor than most of your cooking oils. And on top of that, it also helps it sear that skin up a little bit. Now, before we get started, a little trick I like to do. I'm just taking some regular sugar, and I'm actually going to sprinkle the top of my salmon with the sugar as well. Now, with this, it creates a nice little caramelization on top of your salmon. So that way it's a little sweet, really tasty, but it also gives it that nice shiny appearance once you get that. All right. So as you can see, the butter's melted. This pan is really hot. I'm gonna turn it up just a little bit more. And we're gonna go ahead and drop our salmon. Now, when you first went in there, you heard that nice, hot, searing, smoky sound. That's what we want. You want to make sure you keep that. And another thing you want to make sure is that it didn't stick. This is a good piece. We see that it's actually still there. You can still move it around very easily. That means we're going to have a nice look and nice skin to that as Now, some people ask, like, well, why don't you take the scales off the fish, the skin off the fish? Me personally, I always like eating the skin, just because if you cook it the right way, Tanisha's making the face. If you cook it the right way, it does actually taste good. So today, that's what we're going to make sure that we're doing. I'm actually going to turn my fan on because it's kind of smooth. And as we do that, we're actually going to start warming up our pan for our asparagus. I have my stainless steel over here. This one, I like using this just because the asparagus cooks really, really fast. Cast iron skillets, they really distribute heat really well, and they take a little bit longer to heat up. And stainless steel, they're really direct, and you have got to put your asparagus on this. So we're actually going to keep this on like medium high. Our salmon is starting to cook. Flip it over. Boom, it's already done. Now we're gonna start cooking the backside of it and the skin of it. So it's gonna taste good. And we don't have to worry about it being nasty. Now, some people ask, in regards to like seasoning the salmon, keep it simple. You don't want to do anything too crazy. I'm actually gonna turn it down a little bit. Cook it a little faster than I thought. We're gonna put a little bit of salt on there. Old Bay, and boom. All right, so the salmon is starting to, it's almost finished actually. Now, if you're a person who has like all the nice kitchen tools and things like that, you actually want to use a meat thermometer to check the temperature inside, internal temperature. Thanks.
You're welcome.
The temperature we're shooting for seafood is 145 degrees. You always want to stick it in the thickest part of the meat. So here we're at all right, there we go. About 112, so we still got a little bit more time. So I'm gonna turn it back on and put it on medium. We already got the nice sear, so we don't have to keep it as high. Now, our pan for our asparagus, getting there. So we're gonna go ahead and get ready to start cooking our asparagus. Now, asparagus, I do the same thing. Use some butter, throw it in there. Let it sizzle, swirl it around a little bit. Make sure that you get that flavor all over the entire pan. I'm actually going to turn that up just a little bit. All right, now we're going to start taking our asparagus. Now, me personally, I'm always a fan of thicker pieces of asparagus because the smaller ones, they cook so quick. So you have to definitely be careful in regards to cooking your asparagus. Now, some people are saying, I actually messed that up. I don't have tongs whenever I cook for the most part, or a spatula, just because I learned the technique or learning how to cook food like this. But if you do need a set of tongs, you definitely have that handy whenever you can move your asparagus. You don't want one side to get dark and the other side to get light. You want to make sure that evenly cooked. Okay, so we're gonna turn that down a little bit. Come back to our salmon. Has a nice. You can tell right now the skin's already done. All right, and that is it. Cut that off. Pick this up, it's a little hot. We're gonna move it right over here. And as you can see,
it's sizzling, y'all.
As you guys can see, the skin is still on. It's dark. It's edible. It's crispy. It's actually going to taste good. We're going to just let this sit right there for a second. Okay. Now, here's the over there. With our asparagus, flambe it. Now, the reason why I'm flambeing it, I was going to say you might want to take a step back.
Oh gosh.
Okay. The reason why you want to be careful with flambeing it is because it's very dangerous. Tequila has a high alcohol content, so it's going to easily catch fire. But what I like about this is it takes the flavor out of the alcohol and puts it into the food without actually putting the alcohol. So now that our asparagus is mostly done, I'm going to put the tequila in there first, then we're going to see. Okay, so I add my tequila. Really quick, really easy, really simple. If you weren't careful, you may have lost an eyebrow, but it's going to be good. Now we're just going to simply season it, salt. You can smell the tequila here. Yeah. A little pepper. That's done. So now what we have a great piece of salmon. We also have a great piece of asparagus. And now we're going to begin to plate. So plating is always the fun part, just because this is where you actually make your food look good. So when people plate, they typically like to use huge pieces of huge tongs. You can do that, but with asparagus, I actually like to use these. They're culinary tongs. They're small. They're very accurate. You can do a lot more with them. And they allow you to put your food exactly where you want. So especially when you're talking about like a date night, trying to impress somebody, this is the way to go. Because if they say, "Oh, okay, I see you over there plating your food," I was about to say it doesn't matter how your food tastes, but if it looks good, you guys will definitely notice the difference. All right, so have our asparagus. Boom, nice and seasoned. It smells good. It tastes good. Next thing we're going to use our fish spatula. Different than a regular spatula. This one is designed for fish because typically, like a cod or something like that, can easily fall apart, or a catfish, you want to make sure that it's a longer spatula that you can easily lay out. So with salmon, we could use a regular spatula, but we're going to use our fish spatula. All right, I'm going to take it. We're going to plate it straight on top of our asparagus. Now, most people would be like, "Oh, snap, finished," but we're not. So we're going to actually take this same pan back over to the stove. And now, what I want to do is have a little bit of a drizzle that goes on top of the salmon and the asparagus as well. And how do you get that? Good question. Well, first, we want to make sure we get all the flavor and the seasonings out of this pan. What happens with any pan, when you have the black burnt spots on it, people are like, "Oh, I just burnt my food." It's actually the flavor that you want to try to get back out. The way we're going to do that by taking a little white cooking wine. We're just going to pour it in there. What's happening now is that wine is pulling those flavors off to the bottom of the pan. You don't have to worry about flambeing with this one just because there's a low alcohol content. So even if I tilt it, I got tequila, none of that. You're safe. All right. Now, as that simmers down, right, we're going to come back up. Now, one thing I like to do in regards to garnishing is always to use lemon zest. Lemon zest looks good, but it also makes your food smell good and taste good as well. So that citrusy taste that people look for whenever they cook, just use the zest of the lemon. Make sure you rinse and wash your lemon first. But if you do that, you have add a little bit of zest. It tastes really good.
So Bruce, you did have a question. Okay. They would like to know what part of the asparagus stem to trim.
Okay. That's a really good question. I'm gonna answer that. I'm trying to check this.
Okay.
So in regards to asparagus, I'm glad you asked that. So some people, they'll try to cook the whole thing. But just like whenever you go get flowers from the store, you always want to cut like an inch or two off the stalk. It's the same thing with asparagus because it is a flower. If you take it straight off the ground and just eat that part that they give you in the grocery store, you're going to be chewing forever. So about an inch and a half, you should be good. Especially for the thicker ones, you really want to cut those. These are thinner. I didn't have to cut as much. The thicker ones. Okay, that was a good question. All right. So next thing we're going to do We have our lemon zest. We're actually going to add a little bit of lemon juice to our salmon. You can stay up with attention.
Okay.
Now, with the lemon juice, you could just get the lemon out of the bottle, lemon juice out of the bottle. But it's always best to have just fresh squeezed lemon juice. Like a lot of people like to do this and just squeeze it and try to manhandle the lemon, but honestly, you won't be able to get as much juice out of it. So what I like to do is take a fork, put it inside of the lemon or any citrus, and you just kind of gently twist it at first. Always want to make sure you know where the seeds are. I had to take about 3 of them out, and then from there, you'll see how much easier that lemon juice comes out. So that way, at least the lemon juice is on there. You don't have to catch arthritis by just putting in some lemon. It's a lot simpler there. Okay, and now the next thing we're gonna do, we got our lemon juice. We got a lot of our flavors from that pan. This is another culinary tool. This is the one that you use to kind of like drizzle juice on top of your foods and stuff like that. So we're gonna do the same thing with those flavors that we got from our salmon. Grab a little bit, just slowly pour it over. There we go. That's what I wanted. And with that, we actually are done. Simple, easy, and straight to the point. Now, I know our theme is when life gives you lemons, so I'm gonna add one more thing to it. You can add a little lemon on top, and boom, there you go. So this is a quick, easy, healthy, light dish for anybody to make. You can spruce it up, you can spruce it down, you can go whatever direction you want to go with it, but it's just really simple and easy. All right, now, second part, the sweet part. When it comes to strawberry lemonade cupcakes, you can shoot them down here, Tanisha. I was gonna go through the process, but it took me like an hour just to go through the entire thing. So instead, what I'm gonna do is just give you guys some quick tips in regards to cupcakes. Baking is hard, but it is definitely fun and I like it. You have to be very exact and very precise whenever you're baking. So I'm actually gonna take one of my cupcakes I opened up earlier. And as you guys can see, the actual cake itself, nice, moist, very soft, very spongy. I actually use cake flour instead of regular all-purpose flour. Cake flour is really good, just it has more gluten in it, and therefore makes it more spongy and more cakey. If you use all-purpose flour, there's nothing wrong with it. It won't taste bad, but it definitely does help when you're talking about the texture. Now, you'll see on the inside, I actually put a strawberry jam filling in there. 100% made that myself. Very easy. All you have to do is take some strawberries, a cup of sugar, and a little bit of cornstarch, and let it cook inside of a pan. You'll start to see the juices from the strawberry come out of the strawberry and make this nice little jam. Mash it up, and boom, next thing you know, you have a strawberry-filled cupcake. And the last piece, in regards to the actual whipped cream, I'm trying to find one that has a good example. Oh, this one does. This little piece right here. You'll see there's a little pink strokes and then the white strokes. Those are the pink side is the actual strawberry side, and the white side is the lemon side. Whenever you make, this is a buttercream frosting, so I use butter and cream sugar as well. So buttercream in combination with powdered sugar. It's one of the better tasting frostings. The only downside to it has a very, 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 very low melting point. So even when you're piping it by hand, you'll start to notice that the icing is melting. I actually had another frosting that I wanted to work with, but this time I didn't do it. And it's a Swiss meringue frosting. And that just uses egg whites, regular sugar, and then you add your buttercream, your butter and your cream cheese to it. So I don't know, Tanisha, you want to try one?
Oh, yes, I would. Let me go ahead and flip this around. And my eyebrows are still intact for everyone that was wondering, but I definitely will. Could you hold that for me, please? Okay. The strawberry in the middle is good, y'all. That's really good.
Thank you.
Okay.
And but thanks. Okay, cool. There you go. And like I said, these took a little bit more extra time, but it's definitely worth it. Even the things from the small touches, such as having the lemon zest on the frosting, to putting the actual strawberry pieces on the inside. I'll just tell you this right now: nothing was brought out of the box. This is all 100% homemade. And I'm going to post these recipes later for anybody who wants to try them out. Or if you have any questions about how to make these cupcakes specifically, please reach out to me, Dee the Chef, on Instagram and Facebook. And if anybody has any questions, I'll like to answer them.
Do we have any questions? They said they need the curbside pickup address.
Go to my website and I'll definitely get back to you.
And what's your website?
BDTheChef.com.
And your Instagram and Facebook handles?
Both of them, BD the Chef.
All right, perfect. All right, thank you. Thank you. It was so good. Time to announce our winners. So our first winner is Yvette Powell. Congratulations. And our second winner is Mr. Tony Mack. Congratulations as well.
Job, man. So
and our third and final winner is Lisa Kelly. If you are still on, we hope you are, please let us know. We'll get in contact with you on how you can pick up and when you can pick up your brownies. We also want to thank everyone for tuning in today. Thank you, Dr. Candace Williams, Cass Logan, and BD the Chef. It was an amazing, amazing event today. If you do want to stay connected with us, we're on social media, Facebook, as well as Instagram. Check us out at Zion Woodbridge. We would love to hear from you. In the meantime, have a good day.